You're the guy people call when they need a helping hand, moving furniture, unloading a truck. But lately, your shoulder's been acting up, and you're the one who's calling for help. And that's the moment you realize you can no longer shoulder the load.
The Joint and Spine Center is Cincinnati's leading destination for orthopedic care, with a range of surgical and non-surgical treatments. So when a moment has the power to change the rest of your life, go to the one place with the power to change it for the better, the Christ Hospital Health Network. This changes everything.
The Pound This Podcast is brought to you by the Christ Hospital Health Network. This is the Pound This Podcast, episode 708, my journey of losing 100 plus pounds from the start to now.
I want to lose weight, but I don't know how to get started.
What should I meal prep every week?
How do I get those sweet booty gains?
Inspiration for your healthy lifestyle. The Pound This Podcast with Amanda Valentine.
Hey friends, thank you so much for listening to the Pound This Podcast. I am Amanda Valentine, and let's talk all about me. I've done several episodes over the past 4 years of doing this podcast, of talking about my own journey, but I know there's new people listening all of the time, and it's hard to sift through so many freaking episodes that I have. I mean, we're talking 4 years worth here. So I kind of wanted to reiterate my story for anybody new here, or if you kind of want to hear me retell it, because guess what? It's constantly changing and evolving every time I tell this story of where I have come from with the struggles my whole life and where I am now, which is different than where I was last time I recorded an episode kind of going through my journey. So to start from the beginning, I just was an obese child. I've been obese as long as I can remember, from about 6 years old or so, knowing that I was wearing more adult size clothes that I knew I was a bigger kid in class, and I knew because people pointed that out all the time. Isn't that fun? When you get to be the person that gets picked on in class, which I wasn't the only one, but I grew up in a really small town of 2,700 people. I grew up in Millstadt, Illinois, which is about a half hour or so outside of St. Louis, but just a small town, four-way stop, not a stoplight. As far as I know, there's still no traffic lights in Millstadt. So I went through school there. We moved to Millstadt after my parents got divorced, and I was in third grade. So from third grade through eighth grade, I was with the same 60 kids. And I graduated eighth grade, and there was no middle school or anything then. There is now. And high school, I had to go to another town, which was about 7 to 10 miles away. And so being with the same 60 kids, I was a trailer park kid, poor kid, big Coke bottle glasses, big jacked up teeth, and overweight, incredibly shy and introverted. And so it wasn't the easiest thing on me, it's not like everybody's childhood is all peaches and cream and sunshine and rainbows and puppies and kittens. So it was the 90s, so there wasn't a whole lot about health and nutrition or any of that knowledge available to me. I didn't have the internet, and that's not something that was important to my mom, who was a single parent. So I didn't really know how to deal with that. That lasted all through high school. In high school, I took extra band classes just to avoid gym. I hated gym so much when I was in grade school because I wasn't good at it, and I got picked on, including by the gym teachers. That was real fun. Also hashtag the 90s. And I hated changing in front of everybody, and I got made fun of. So then I would change in the bathroom stall, and I got made fun of for that. But at least I was getting made fun of for being in the bathroom stall and not my body, like when I was changing in front of the other girls. So I had a really weird relationship with exercise and gym and all of that. It's just not been a pleasant place for me for a large portion of my life, which is funny because, fast forwarding here a little bit now, being a personal trainer, like that was nothing that would ever would have crossed my radar, not even a little bit. So that's pretty much my grade school, high school experience. When I started in college, I wanted to go into radio. I always wanted to be on the radio. I because I kind of was more of an introverted loner kid, minus my little core friend group that I had, I just was obsessed with this morning show that was on the radio in St. Louis at the time. If you're from St. Louis, it was Steve and DC. And I just felt like they were my friends, and I felt so connected to them. And even though I'd never met them and I didn't have the internet to see them, that I had my mom take me to meet them at a carpet store where they had a live broadcast so I could get their autograph, which I still have, and a cassette of their best of. And so I loved radio. Like, catch me listening to my headphones all the time. I could tell you at the time what radio station we were listening to based off of the commercials. That level of dork. So when I started in college, I was just super shy and introverted my first semester, but I loved that I was in radio. I went to Lewis and Clark Community College, which is in Godfrey, Illinois. And once I kind of got started with that, it opened me up a lot more. And I would say that I was doing some form of dieting then. By dieting, it was just like not eating. I know that I didn't get on a scale and I didn't know my weight. But I had, a boyfriend at the time. I didn't have a boyfriend through high school. And so I was starting to get attention from guys, which looking back on just how desperate and sad I was to have a boyfriend and feeling I was unworthy of anybody, and just anybody would pay me any sort of attention, I would just take it because I felt like, hey, I'm this unattractive, overweight person and nobody will ever want me. And I was actually told that often by my own dad that, I'm fat and no one will ever love me. And I mean, that's just scratching the surface of some of the things that I kind of went through growing up, but that ingrained in me. And that's something I still struggle with, when you hear that a lot and you kind of see that's how people behave, and all my friends had boyfriends and everything else, and I didn't. And, and then I have so many body image issues and everything that it's, it was rough going, and anybody that would pay me any sort of attention, even in the most negative ways, I would take it. And I don't regret any of that now, because that's just, I learned a lot from it. And that's just kind of how it was. And that's just who I was. And I accepted a lot of things because I didn't think that I was good enough for anything better. And from there, I started moving around the country for radio. And I'm not going to go into my whole radio career because unless you really care, you can ask me. I'm sure I've talked about it on a million other podcasts, and I have on Pound Town, my other Patreon podcast, if you want to check that out. But when I moved away from my first full-time job, I know I definitely did Atkins. I was in Paducah, Kentucky, until I became friends with some of the people that just started a job at the radio station, and they're like, yeah, let's get hammered all the time. And I'm like, hell yeah. So then it was just a solid diet of ramen, bologna, and Bud Light. And so there was no weight loss during that. Also, my first several radio jobs, I was so poor that I would go and work at Subway when I got off the air. So I moved to my second full-time job, which is a morning show. And when I'd get off the morning show, I would go work at Subway in the afternoons. One, so I could pay rent. And two, because I could get free food. And you think, oh, Subway Fresh, that's a healthier version. Oh, hell no, I wasn't eating anything healthy at Subway. Put a sack of mayonnaise on that. Oh man, I was making the unhealthiest things. And at the time, they just revealed salads at Subway. And man, did I load those things up in the most inappropriate ways. I would make the most insanely calorically dense salad and watch American Idol whenever I would get home from work so I could talk about it the next day on the air. So I do have those memories. And I did my very first for serious kind of weight loss journey at my next radio station, which was in Elmira, New York, which is also where I met my husband, Mike. And it was LA Weight Loss, which doesn't exist anymore. And I did, and it's incredibly strict. It's literally 6 wheat thins and 7 grapes. It's just, you're eating like a pigeon. And I mean, it works though. And I stuck to it so hardcore because I was talking about it on the radio, and I'm like, I'm not going to talk about something on the radio that I'm not going to do. And that's not who I am. And so I stuck to it to a T, minus some really big breakdowns where I just cause I was just so restrictive. And I understand this now. And I didn't understand this at the time, that I was under such strict restrictions that it would put me into a binge. And, you know, a good example was, so we got, like, you get free food at radio stations all the time. And so somebody had a bunch of like chicken wings. And since my husband worked at the radio station, he did afternoons and I did the morning show. I was like, hey, I'm going to bring all these wings home to my apartment. So whenever you come over to my apartment, when you get off the air and you get off work, you can have all these chicken wings. And he's like, cool, thanks. And I motored through a couple dozen wings. I just couldn't help myself. I just binged so hard. And then I called him on the hotline at the radio station crying. I'm like, I want to make myself throw up. And I was just freaking out that I like ruined my diet and I just undid all this stuff. And he had to walk me off this ledge, which pretty much was a good little taste for him of what the next decade was going to look like. Of all these restrictive diets and going into binges and everything else. And so, I lost 60 pounds in 6 months on that. And then I moved to my next radio job, which was in Rochester, New York. And so I wasn't doing the LA weight loss thing anymore because I wasn't part of that radio station. And I never really learned how to eat. Like, I just did what they told me to do. Like, there was lists of like, if you go to this restaurant, this is what you're allowed to eat. Like, there was no information of like, why am I making this choice? You know, it was just like, and even like the wheat thins and all that stuff, like it was all in lists. It was lists, eat this many, the end. And so, which I liked because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But whenever I'm not doing that, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And so and that weight just came right back because I went back to drinking a bunch. I mean, I was in my early 20s and I had discovered sushi. And so I was eating that and everything else. If you're familiar with Rochester, I was eating garbage plates. And then we got engaged and I'm like, oh my God. So in that time too, I had done Weight Watchers a couple times and I gained weight all of those times because I got so stressed about the points, because then I would just not eat all day, freaking out that I would use up all my points. And what am I going to do? I'm going to be so hungry. So I would be starving all day and then have a butt ton of points at the end of the day. And then basically kind of have to go into a binge to eat my points. And I got so confused and wrapped up about the exercise part and earning your points back. And I mean, at this time, this was, you know, probably 2007, 2008, somewhere in there, whatever Weight Watchers systems was at the time. And I just did not enjoy it. And then when we got engaged, I did South Beach diet. And so the first couple weeks of that are like no carbs. And I decided to just do that pretty much for like 3 months. And so I ate like no carbs, just like green vegetables, lean meats, some cheese, and a little bit of nuts. And I did that for 3 months of leading up to our wedding. And I lost like 30 or 40 pounds. I can't remember exactly. And then as soon as our wedding happened, I got, you know, ham boned and drank my face off and got super drunk because I didn't have any carbs all summer. And then we moved to Denver for another radio job. And again, I didn't learn anything. The wedding's over, went right back to my ways. And the job that I moved there for ended up being one of the worst jobs I ever had. And it was incredibly stressful. And so I would come home and just binge eat to the point of pain every night. Mike wasn't home and he was at his job. We had different hours. So I would hit up multiple drive-thrus on the way home and just eat my feelings, like just eat to the point of pain, and do that every night. And I would hide the trash. My hiding spot was underneath the sink, and wait till that bag of trash got so full that I would have to walk down 3 flights of stairs and throw it away, which I would have to do with pizza boxes, which was upsetting because I couldn't hide those anywhere else. And I had to go down and up 3 flights of stairs, which I did not want to do. So, and there was even points of time where, you know, I would order pizza and I would answer the door and act like there was a party going on. There's, well, hey guys, pizza's here, when nobody was there. It was me. And, you know, and I've had so many people bring up instances before, and I have been so guilty of this, of just like getting extra food for the car, of like, I'm just going to eat this on my way home to eat. and then hide that evidence and hide that trash. So because I want to just eat more. And it's not even that you're super hungry. It's just, I've done so many episodes of this podcast about binge eating and binge eating disorder that I would recommend going back and find those whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. Just look up Pound This Binge Eating, and several episodes, a lot of them, will come up with, people that are experts in that field, not just me and my own personal experience. And so it just got to the point where I'm like, this isn't me. I'm living in Colorado. This is one of the most beautiful places. Everybody out here is fit and healthy and outside. And I'm binge drinking with my friends, and I'm binge eating in secret. And this isn't who I am. This isn't who I want to be. Right. And so I'm like, I've tried all these different diets and nothing works, and it comes back. And whenever you lose weight and it comes back and you have to lose it again, it is such a freaking bummer. And it's so hard. And so I'm like, I can't do this anymore. So I just was like, okay, New Year's resolution time. It was part of a morning show I was on the time, which we just discussed this on my episode of Pound Town. Again, my Patreon podcast. If you want to check that out, patreon.com/Pound Town podcast. We read an article about how you should do smaller goals. And for New Year's, thinking of doing a goal for the entire year is too overwhelming. So do a 90-day goal. So I did that. And my goal was to lose 15 pounds in 3 months. And I was going to do it without a diet. My mantra was just make the best decision possible in every moment. And the example I've used a million times, which if you've listened to this podcast for a while, you've heard a bunch, is if I go to a ball game, I want a hot dog and a beer. And I want to do that without feeling guilty or feeling like I'm a turd human because I failed and, oh my God, I can't stick to anything. It's like, no, that's the best decision because I'm at a ball game and I want to enjoy myself, and I'm not going to pack some kale. But the next time I eat, then that's the next opportunity to make the best choice possible in that moment. And so that's kind of where I started, was with that. And I knew there were some things that I had to completely cut out just because I knew I couldn't regulate them, including fast food. So I was just like, hey, I know that I can't go to McDonald's and make a good choice. I knew that about me from a decade of yo-yo dieting. I'm like, that's just something I'm going to have to tell myself you're going to have to avoid for a minute. And until I can get into a better place mentally. So the goal originally was to just give myself a break from fast food until I could get a better handle on it. But now it's been over 10 years since I've eaten fast food because I just like streaks. And I mean, I can go and have fast food now and have a better relationship with it. But it's just, I just don't need it. It's something I can plan for in different ways. And so, I just telling my own experience, I would never expect anybody to do that and be like, well, just never eat fast food again. You know what I mean? Well, I did. Why can't you? Like, I don't, that is not my vibe at all. It's like it started for me to get into a better place with it. It's something I knew I had to put a pause on. And after I did that, I felt like I didn't need it again. And the same thing with soda. I mean, I really was drinking a ton of Dr. Pepper. And I don't like diet sodas. And, we could get into the whole debate about diet sodas too. Not in this episode. But I was like, that's also going to need to take a pause for right now. Especially because, doing morning shows on the radio for so long and needing caffeine, I didn't drink coffee at all because in order to drink coffee, I would put so much creamer and sugar in it that it wasn't even coffee anymore. So I would drink soda for breakfast. And so I'm like, that's going to have to take a pause. And now, again, it's been over 10 years since I've had that, but just because I don't need it. And so those were my two hard, like, take a pause and we'll come back to this when I'm in a better space. And then I'm like, well, I know I'm going to need caffeine. So let's start trying to learn how to drink coffee. And so one of the things I started then was I just started drinking iced mochas because I like those. So I didn't use, skinny or whatever, just full-fledged iced mocha. I liked them. I enjoyed them. And then I went from that to an iced latte. And then I went from that just to black. I like iced coffees. And that process took me about a year. So I don't want to act like that happened overnight. Like that was a process that I had to wean myself into. So again, my New Year's resolution wasn't like cut everything out. I was still drinking like iced mochas all the time. It was just, to me, that was a better choice. That was a better decision in that moment than it was to drink 3 Dr. Peppers. You know what I mean? And so, because I knew that was a process to go somewhere else. And I didn't know how well it was going to work. It was just kind of live through it and see what happens. I also knew I was really bad at eating vegetables. And so I'm like, I just got to do something to get more vegetables in my face. And so I ate a butt ton of stir fry because I like stir fry. And I was using a crap ton of teriyaki sauce. So at first, when I first started, it was just like, it wasn't like I went from eating Burger King all day to eating steamed vegetables and rice and chicken. Like, I did not make that hard transition. I was like, I know I don't eat vegetables. I want to eat more vegetables. I want to enjoy them. And if I enjoy them smothered in teriyaki sauce right now, at least the vegetables getting in my face. You know what I mean? So I ate a lot of stir fry, and I can't even tell you exactly what point that I started kind of like phasing out the teriyaki sauce, or at least just not as much. You know what I mean? I mean, I was pouring a ton on there at first, but again, I was still losing weight because it was still a better choice than the other things I was doing. So I was doing a lot of stuff like that, where was I eating quote unquote perfect or the cleanest? No, I was making better decisions for me of just baby stepping in the right direction. That I wasn't drinking any water at all, of like, okay, well, just drink some freaking water. So just starting to drink water. I wasn't drinking a gallon a day like I do now. It was just drink some. Can you just please get some in your body? Same thing with the vegetables and everything else. So, I mean, I was eating a lot of stir fry. I tended to be a little bit lower carb at the beginning, just because I think we're also like, that's punched into our head to be lower carb. But I didn't go without carbs. I just ate different carbs. You know what I mean? I wasn't eating a ton of bread and chips and all that sort of stuff. I was adding more of like the rice, and I was eating a lot of grape nuts, weirdly, at the time. But I will tell you, grape nuts with cottage cheese is legit. Put some fruit on there. Oh, hell yeah. I will eat that all day long. So I'm sure there's plenty of people who tell you grape nuts are crap or whatever, but I enjoy them. I still enjoy them. I don't eat it a ton now, but I ate a crap ton of grape nuts. When I first got started, I ate a lot of stir fry. I had a lot of apple nachos, which was just slicing apples real thin, and I would drizzle them with peanut butter and some like mini chocolate chips and some coconut flakes. Oh, hell yeah. So again, can that be a sugar bomb? Can that be a lot of fat? Is it a lot of calories? Sure. But is that better than me like literally going to the store and buying mini cakes and just eating them by myself? Like just eating a freaking birthday cake by myself in my car. Yeah, apple nachos are a better choice than that. Is it the best choice in the entire world? I don't know. It depends on who you ask, right? Like, I can't say that it's not. And I think that's why we're talking about health and fitness and wellness and weight loss. It's hard because really what the right answer is what's right for you. And that felt right for me. Like those things I enjoyed. I liked the process. I didn't like eating 7 grapes when I was on like weight loss. Like that felt like prison. Apple nachos didn't feel like prison. I'm like, these are a better choice. And I freaking love them. They're freaking delicious. So drinking more water, cutting out the fast food, cutting out the Dr. Pepper. I also was just such a Red Bull slut too. I mean, so much Red Bull. And that's also where the coffee came in. Then I cut out Red Bull. Red Bulls, now I drink a few of them a year, like on road trips for my birthday or something. I had 2 Red Bulls on my birthday this year. Yellow! Because I wanted to try one of the flavored ones, which wasn't a fan. I'm just a fan of just the solid old school Red Bull, I've learned. But again, I'm not telling myself I can't have it. I can have it whenever the hell I want to. I'm an adult, 39 years old. If I want to go buy a Red Bull, I can, but it's my choice not to. And I think that's an important part of this process is it's having that relationship with yourself and with food and movement and everything else and your own body and your mind and your mindset and everything is just being like, once I tell myself I can't have something, that's all I think about. And I've learned that a lot over the past decade, because I started this New Year's resolution for me was 2012. So we are creeping up on that real quick here of the 10-year mark of me beginning my journey that I've been on over the past 10 years. So that it was just kind of, just trying to make better choices than what I had been making. I started walking just because I like to walk and I like to listen to podcasts. So I put on my headphones and I started just going walk around the block a couple times. I didn't start hardcore. Like, again, it was just like, do this, see how I like it. I was pretty hyped whenever I started walking a couple miles a day. I was just using like one of the like running apps on my phone at the time, and just to kind of track my miles, and that kind of got exciting. And then at the end of that first year, I got a Fitbit for Christmas, and I did become pretty obsessed with my Fitbit. So I just did a ton of walking. So I didn't have a gym membership because, again, as I said, you know, my previous life I had not a good relationship with gyms at all. And even in my 20s, when there was like radio stations that I worked at that I got a gym membership with, and I would show up and do the elliptical for 20 minutes and be like, I showed up and pieced out. Like, I just didn't maximize. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't enjoy it. I just went because I felt like I had to, you know what I mean? So when I started this journey I'm on now, that's where it was just walking, and I just started walking more and more. And then I started feeling so good. My New Year's resolution at that time was 15 pounds in 3 months, and I lost 20 pounds in those 3 months. And it wasn't about the number, even though I kind of put that down as just something, and it was an on-air bit. But it was like, I did this by myself this time. I wasn't following a list of what to eat, don't eat, do these points, don't do these points. You're allowed to have this, you're not allowed to have that. I was doing what I wanted, and these were decisions I made by myself for my own body and my own life. And I was feeling freaking awesome, and the scale was moving in the direction I wanted it to. And it was just very empowering. Like, it's like, oh my God, I'm doing this. Like, I'm figuring this out. And again, it wasn't like you got over 100 pounds to lose, Amanda, hustle. It was just like, no, it's just, this life feels good. Like, I'm moving more. I'm excited to be outside. And so I started doing a Couch to 5K podcast, which is the Chubby Jones podcast, which we follow each other on Instagram. And I think that's super cool. It's, that podcast helped change my life in a lot of ways. I had never run. I had never been a runner. I didn't, do the presidential challenge or any of that when I was in school. And I remember when I ran my first mile without stopping is when I was 30. And I remember exactly where I was in Denver, and I just stopped and just cried in the middle of the street. I'm like, oh my God, I ran a freaking mile. I ran a mile for the first time in my life. And I'm like, what else can I do? And so I kept running, and I was, working up towards a 5K. And by the time I'd taken another radio job in Oregon, I was down 60, 70 pounds, something like that. I wrote down the timeline somewhere, and I can't remember exactly what it is, but I know that I was down around that amount. And by the time we got to Oregon, I signed up for my first official 5K. I did a color run, and that was super exciting. So I was running a lot. I was walking a lot. When I moved to Oregon, I started hiking a lot. So that's what I was doing for exercise. Around the time we moved to Oregon is also when I started getting into meal prepping, just because doing morning shows and everything. I mean, you're waking up at 3:30 in the morning, and your days and your hours are all funky and weird. And I just knew I needed to start kind of planning my day a little bit better with what I was eating, especially because I had lost so much weight at that point, and to kind of get things a little bit further along, because you plateau like forever. And it's a whole nother topic, is plateaus. So I would prep out my breakfast and prep out some things I needed for the rest of the day. And so I started just meal prepping. Started out with just breakfast, because that was what I needed most for the radio station. So again, like I if you follow me on Instagram and stuff like that now, and you know about my meal prep, because I meal prep almost all my meals now, and I love meal prepping. I know it's not for everybody. And again, I'm not telling anybody to do that. This is just what worked for me, because it took out so much of the worry, like the worry that got me with doing Weight Watchers, or even doing calorie counting and stuff like that. When I've tried doing that in the past, was I would just have so much anxiety about it. Like, cause I wouldn't have it planned out the day before. Like, I would just try to live in the moment and fulfill these numbers while I'm going through life during the day. And it was paralyzing to me. It was just gave me so much anxiety and stressed me out so much. It just put weight on me. So I learned, like, well, when I have things kind of thought out and I prep it, and at that time I wasn't counting calories or anything like that. I was just kind of making my best judgment about foods that I wanted to eat and foods that, felt good to me. and just kind of cooking those in advance. And that like took so much stress off of me and anxiety of just knowing that it was done and I didn't have to think about it. That's why I really love meal prepping. I don't like the feeling of opening the fridge and being like, oh God, what am I going to eat? And am I going to make the right decision? Because, especially because I'm an emotional eater and things can go haywire real quick when you have a crap day or you're on your period or whatever else. So I'm like, I like knowing that, again, I still have a choice. Like I open the fridge and I could see my meal prep containers, and this choice isn't like, you have to eat that, you made it. Like, again, I'm an adult. I can go hit up McDonald's right now if I want to. I can stop recording this right now and leave, and I can go get a rack of ribs or something. I can do whatever the hell I want. And so it's like, but I made that. That's a choice I made for myself. Do I want to stick to it? Or is it like, nah, And that's where it's like, then, from that process, learning for me to really kind of clue into myself of like, okay, what do you want to do? What's the best decision right now? What's the best decision in this moment? Is it to eat that meal prepped lunch that you made? Or is it F it? Like go out to lunch with somebody else and just, get like a huge smothered burrito, and sometimes I go do that. You know what I mean? It's not like this all or nothing thing anymore. Because I had done that so much, and not to say I don't get in phases of that and your headspace gets there. Again, there is no freaking, there's no perfection. It's just life. And it's just knowing when I feel good and what things I do that give me that feeling. And so, from there, I lost, then I was over the 100-pound mark, when I was in Oregon. I moved to Cincinnati in 2015. And, when I got here, you get to the radio station and they're looking for endorsement deals and stuff like that. And they asked me if I would be interested in skin removal surgery because of my weight loss, because I had lost over 100 pounds. And I'm like, you know what? That's something that I really not considered. It's weird to think that that's not something that was in the forefront of my mind. And I guess at the time too, I didn't think the extra skin I had, specifically on my abdomen, I didn't see that as extra skin. I just thought it was like fat I still needed to lose. But it wasn't like I was just hating on my body either that much at that point. But I was like, yeah, that's something I'm interested in. So I kind of shopped around for plastic surgeons, and I found Dr. Lead, who was absolutely amazing. This isn't an ad or anything. Which is renewyourlooks.com if you're in Cincinnati. And she was just amazing. She was brutally honest about things that could go wrong. And so I decided to do that. But it's funny with some of the other consultations I had, like one of the doctors told me that I was wearing a coat of my own bad decisions. And I was like, oh my God. Never thought about it that way. And I don't really agree with that, but it was like, God, it was just one of those things of like, what? And to think of like, oh, well, you think of this ideal body and you're never going to have it because again, I've been overweight since I was 6. There's like nothing to snap back to. And I know people like really dump on people who have had skin removal surgery as if it's some sort of cheat or way out. And I disagree with that. I absolutely would have not gotten skin removal surgery if it wouldn't have been something that was available to me. And I'd still be very happy because I was doing things I had never done. Like, I'm summiting mountains and running half marathons and just genuinely enjoying my life more and just happier and a different mindset. And just, it's not just about the size or the aesthetics. It's about my quality of life was so much better. And I'm just out and enjoying things and not hiding from people taking my picture or not going out and doing things because I'm afraid, well, what will it look like if I'm doing that? And they're going to be like, oh, why is this fat girl doing this? And all this stuff that you say in your head and you terrorize yourself and you hold yourself back from just living, right? And whether somebody says something to you or not, you're saying it to yourself. And I just wouldn't allow myself to live the life I wanted to live because of my body and where my brain was with that. So just such a better headspace of just being healthier. And that's why, it's not just about weight loss and the number and you've lost over 100 pounds and you go from a pant-sized this to a pant-sized that. It's like, no, I was actually just living the life I wanted to live. And I felt good in my own body, and I felt confident, and I felt happier. And that's such the big win. But I did have 7.5 pounds of skin removed from my abdomen. And that was a game changer for me too. Like, it's just the confidence that came from that. I'd never worn a belt in my life before. At one point in my life, I turned down a job at Best Buy because I didn't want to tuck in my shirt. Because I'm like, I'm very self-conscious about my fupa and I don't want to show it off. So sorry, Best Buy. I never worked for you, even though you offered me a job. And so that was also just a different confidence boost. And I absolutely am very happy with that choice and my results. But again, like I said, that's something that I could live without too. And I would still be proud of myself and happy for myself for making better decisions for myself. And from there, after that, and I healed from that, I kind of got my first for realsy gym membership in Cincinnati, and I was working out at Fit Next until I started having a lot of knee issues. Then I started training myself at the Y, and that's kind of where I was with exercise. I kind of got really into exercise and strength training, which I am, very interested in now, and seeing how much strength training and lifting weights and doing and resistance training and everything like really changes your body. I don't really have any regrets because everything that I've done and I continue to do, I learn from. But if I had to change something, I would incorporate strength training so much earlier on instead of just nothing but cardio, because it really does change your body, and feeling strong and feeling like a badass is amazing. I mean, crossing a finish line at a race does make me feel like a badass, but not like when you're doing some heavy ass lifts, especially if you're in a gym full of gritty like Arnold, and there's all these dudes that think that they're like hot shit, and you're just in there like beating their ass like, yeah. I'm into that. So, with that, I mean, I've just been into my meal prepping. So into all of that, and where this podcast came in is I had someone, one of my bosses at the radio station was like, why don't you talk more about your journey on the air? Because it really resonates with people. And I was like, it's hard to do that in between songs, like an example I always use with that too is like, I binge ate last night. I ate a whole pizza. Here's Luke Bryan. And so it's like, it was just not conducive for doing a fun afternoon show on the radio. So it was suggested I started a blog, which I did. And then I like talking more than I like writing. So I asked if I could do a podcast, which had to be under ownership of the radio station at the time. So I started this podcast. If you go back and listen to the very beginning, it was called Wait a Minute. And that was the name of the blog that I wrote. And it started with the Wait a Minute lives that we did in my kitchen, which was a fun process. And I should definitely do something like that again. It's just, man, finding time and all that stuff now is just bonkers. It's a different world than it was in 2018. And so, I started this podcast, which was a huge game changer for me. I mean, honestly, it completely changed my life. And if you've listened to this podcast, you've heard me cry and talk everything else about this, but it really has, because it allowed me to talk more about my story. I'd never talked to anyone, not my husband, anyone, about binge eating until this podcast. This is the first time I ever talked about it and really realized what I was doing and where I was, and talking to experts and talking that through and having so much feedback from you guys listening to this and being like, oh my God, that's me too. Of like, oh my God, this is just amazing. And so many amazing, incredible people I've met through this podcast, of not only fitness professionals and mental health professionals and nutritionists and dietitians, but so many other people with so many amazing journeys. And it's just been incredible. And so when my contract was up at the radio station at the end of 2019, I chose to walk away from my radio career, which was an incredibly hard decision. And luckily, I was able to keep this podcast and to do this and to pursue a new career in health and fitness, because it had changed my life in so many ways. And I can see how, again, not just losing weight, but choosing healthy choices for you, and living your best life can help you live that best life. You know what I mean? I've done, so many incredible things over the past 10 years, just because, I'm choosing me and I'm doing healthy things for me. And it's just incredible. And I just want that for everybody. I just would love for everybody to do something that makes them feel empowered, feel healthy, be able to go out and do the things that they want to do or you want to do. So, I left right before COVID because I didn't know COVID was coming like everybody else. And which changed a lot of plans. So last year was really super brutal, for mental health and everything else. And I'm stuck at home and everything that I was going to do, like trying to learn to become a personal trainer at the gym and everything else just kind of scattered and fell apart. And I was just gaining weight and just stress eating. And even though I was meal prepping, it's just when you turn this into a job, instead of it just being my passion and my lifestyle, there's just so much incredible pressure. For me to feel like what I look like and what I'm eating and what I have to say. And, you're joining this arena of everybody else in health and fitness and they're the expert and they're right. And, you leave yourself open for attack and oh my God. And then COVID and So, last year, 2020, at the end of summer, I'm like, I can't do this. I'm falling apart. Like my whole podcast is about asking for help and giving people resources when they need help. And I'm like, I need help. And so, I reached out to my friend Sarah, about being my health coach of like, hey man, I need somebody to hold me accountable. I'm a mess. And I still work with Sarah, teamfitwithme.com, which you'll hear about more on this podcast because we're doing more and more stuff together. And she's helped me get things back on track in my own ways with health and fitness, and had incredible results over the past year. I've been in therapy. I was on antidepressants, of really kind of reaching out and asking people around me, like, I'm in a low spot now. Like I need help and I'm okay with asking for help. And I'm so incredibly glad that I did. And so where I am now is I'm still meal prepping because it's my jam. I do have help with Sarah as my health coach. And so she kind of manipulates where she thinks my macros should be. And I plan out the meals. I figure out everything and plug everything into my macros and the ways that I do them. And I know so many people get stressed out about macros, or is it the right or wrong thing to do? There is no right or wrong answer. I think it's really great to know and learn that information. And no one says you have to live that way the rest of your life and count macros. I also am a big believer of intuitive eating, but I feel like you have to have a knowledge base before you can to get to that point, is my personal opinion. So I think it's great to have that knowledge of understand what macros mean, understand what a balanced day looks like, of when you eat, of how you're fueling your body to feel good, and not necessarily just weight loss or whatever else, of like, how are you maximizing this life, And so, and also things that are such an important role that aren't discussed, like sleep, like just sleep and rest, which I'm real bad at. and movement, and how like movement doesn't mean just go get your ass whipped, of like, just breathing exercises and moving your body in healthy ways. And even last year too, of just, I think part of it's mental, and also my body has been broken in ways that I couldn't exercise for most of 2020, which also played a role into me gaining weight and everything else, of like my lower back, like locked up, and it was like sciatic pain and I couldn't get out of it. And it was just that exercise was my release. And now I didn't have a release. And now I'm stuck at home and oh my God. But I'm in such a better place now through physical therapy, again, asking out for help. So shout out to Megan Springer, huge shout out to Shelly from Shalates, who got me in on the reformer and was helping me move my body by trying Pilates and the reformer, which I absolutely love, and how I met Megan for physical therapy. And, it's just, there's just, you can find such a great network of people, which it breaks my heart so bad when I hear that people don't have a support system. And, I have felt like that in the past too. And I've lost friends and everything else through this journey. So that's what I'm hoping this podcast gives, is, a resource or a community. Even if it's just me, if you resonate with me at all, you can always reach out to me. Email Amanda at AmandaValentineBites.com. But that's pretty much, I guess, catching us up. I'm sure I missed a lot of key points, but again, there's over 700 episodes. There's a lot of crap you can catch up on me talking about, but it's just, I think that the big takeaway is just how much my life has changed, and not just necessarily because of the size of my body. It's because I made healthy choices for myself. I showed up for myself. And I think that's what changed it. Like at the very beginning where I'm like, oh my God, I'm figuring this out on my own and I'm doing these things for myself and yeah, it's moving slow and yeah, it's not perfect, but I'm feeling good through it all. I don't feel restrictive. I've parts of this journey in the past 10 years, I have been incredibly restrictive. And I notice when I go into binges, like it's paying attention. It's like really tuning into yourself and having those conversations with yourself. Like when donuts show up at the break room at work, of having the conversation of like, is the donut the best choice for me right now? And it's okay if it's yes. Nobody's going to beat you up. But it's also okay if it's no. You know what I mean? Of just having those conversations. It's hard. This is all incredibly hard work. And I can say that 10 years later or almost 10 years later, that's still every day for me. But I love this life I have now because of all this. I mean, I can't believe that I'm a personal trainer, which if you're in Cincinnati, I am looking for new clients at Cincy 360 Fitness. I'm a certified nutritionist. My other certifications I have are behavior change specialist, which I really love the mental part of all of this. I think it's so intriguing. It really does all stem from where we're at mentally. You know what I mean? So that I have that. I also have my certification weight loss specialist, and I'm not done learning. I'm reading books every day. Right now I'm reading about, how your body holds trauma and how you can release that trauma through, movement. And I don't know, there's always so much to learn, and there's just so much. And I don't want, this podcast could go on forever if I talk about everything I've learned in the past decade. But I mean, that's pretty much my journey from being obese kid, hating myself, to a point where I'm putting bikini pictures on freaking the internet because YOLO, hot bitch summer, of being like, no, I'm confident and I feel good in my body, and I'm really learning to love myself at every size, and to really like find foods I really love and fuel me. Like today I was in a part of town that I'm never in that has a Trader Joe's. So they had a bunch of figs on sale. I'm like, ooh, what can I make with figs? I don't know. That's exciting. And so like, this is just stuff I kind of nerd out about. I'm trying to like make new recipes and going on Pinterest and looking up, healthy recipes. And I enjoy it. It doesn't feel like prison anymore because I found my own way of doing it. And is my way meant for everybody? No, it's not. It's meant for me. Like I can give you my best practices. I can give you helpful advice. But I mean, honestly, the only person that can tell you what's perfectly right for you is you. And that's through conversations you have, research that you do on your own, and then just feeling your own body of like, if you hate broccoli, then don't eat it. I will say though, cook it different ways and give yourself a chance to try different stuff. Like you should experiment with certain things. I mean, because again, we're thinking high, nutritiously dense food was why you want to eat things like vegetables because of all the micronutrients. It's giving something to your body. And so to eat more of those, I do feel is important to give your body that kind of fuel. And it's about finding the way that you like to eat those things. Just eating plain baked chicken makes me want to yak. So I don't cook it that way. I did when I did LA weight loss. I would throw all the chicken breasts on a cookie sheet and bake it and then eat it with like a teaspoon of ketchup. God, I'm even thinking about it now. Just, God. It was so terrible, and I hated chicken for so long after that. You just torture yourself so I could be skinny, and I learned from that. That didn't work for me. I want food to taste good. And so that and just being in a place where kind of healing my relationship with exercise and the trauma that I'd had in that to being the point now where I work in a gym. And I'll be honest with you, I still deal with that. I work with some of the most amazing, incredibly talented trainers, and they're all former athletes and I'm not. And I just can't help but go back to me being 12 years old, being in that locker room, even though it's not that case at all, but part of me is still living in that, you know what I mean? And that's something that I'm working through that I didn't think was going to be a thing. Like, oh, I've been healthy and living this lifestyle so long now that of course I'm going to fit into the gym or any gym, you know what I mean? And then you're like, oh no, I'm still dealing with some of my stuff and working through that. And So, I mean, those are some of the struggles I'm going through now of learning this whole new life and this whole new industry, and how can I take my journey and help other people on theirs, because it is really incredible. And I do really love being with people in person at the gym and talking every day, and and helping other people on their journeys in at least the best ways that I can, is really incredible. So yeah, it's been a wild ride so far, and I'm excited to see where it goes next. So yeah, where I'm at now, I'll be completely honest, I'm not at the lowest weight I've ever been at. And that's totally fine, because I actually really like my body right now. I feel like strong and fit and curvy at the same time. And that I'm a fan of. And that's also from being at the very leanest I have been before. And also knowing how I was sometimes doing 2-a-day workouts to get there. And that's another form of unhealthy, but I wouldn't have known that personally unless I lived through it. And I have. And so I'm in a good place now with my body. After going through a concussion this year, and then the back pain last year, I'm finally getting to a place, oh God, knock on wood, I don't want to jinx myself and hurt myself in some other way where I can't exercise. But in this very moment, I'm able to exercise the way I want to without pain, and doing my strength training. And for my cardio, I'm doing walking. I love to walk. Walking kicks ass. I mean, I lost like 60, 70 pounds from walking alone. I just like to walk and listen to music or listen to podcasts, and sometimes listen to nothing. So again, that's not for everybody, but it's just about finding something you like, And I like to walk, and I still walk, and I like to strength train. I like to lift weights. I like to feel strong. I like to feel like a badass. So I do those things. And luckily, I work at a gym where I have access to all of those things. Although, again, talk about my own personal hangups, I haven't been working out at the gym that I train at, because I'm so in my head that I'm going to do something wrong and I'm going to be judged. And it seems whacked to say that. And I have a feeling the other trainers there probably also think I'm whacked for feeling that. But I'm getting there. I'd say probably within the next couple months, I feel like I'm going to be comfortable working out in front of everybody at the gym. But I'm getting there. Also, the Y is just literally right next to my house. I mean, the gym is like a half hour from my house. The Cincy 360 is. The Y is right next to my house. So it's like I can get up really early in the morning and go straight to the Y and work and bang out a workout and get it done. I like early morning workouts. I don't like end of day workouts. Also, again, personal preference. So those are like new hurdles. You know what I mean? Those are still the same journey, new hurdles to go through. All these injuries I've been through, learning how to get through those mentally and physically, right? It's always going to be something. There's always going to be a wedding. There's always going to be a birthday party. There's always going to be a holiday. There's always something that comes up, and it's just learning to get through it, and you're not going to be perfect through it ever. And, giving yourself the grace to go through things like that. So yeah, that's where I'm at. So take a bow. But yeah, so I really appreciate you listening to this podcast so much. And again, if you ever have any questions or you're interested in personal training or anything like that, please reach out to me. You can email me, amanda@amandavalentinebites.com. You can follow me on Instagram at YouCompoundThis. I got all the links and all that crap in the show notes. Also, if you're interested in supporting this podcast, you can join my Patreon, where you have access to Pound Town, which is patreon.com/poundthispodcast. Or sorry, damn it, Pound Town podcast. Oh, so much pounding. But anyway, that's my story for now. And I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you later.
AmandaValentineBites.com